Hello, everyone. Welcome to this BAKERpedia seminar on how to make the best of your baking tests with objective analyzers. I'm Dr. Lynn, your host for today. So thank you for taking a break in your schedules and joining me and Lena for an interesting seminar. So first, let's thank our sponsors, KPM Analytics. KPM Analytics supplies instruments that measure critical quality parameters of incoming ingredients, analyze products during the baking process, and also ensure final product quality. Their comprehensive range of analyzers are used by food producers throughout their production to improve efficiency, ensure quality, and protect their brand. KPM Analytics is backed by over 100 years of experience developing advanced products and processes for quality assurance and process control in baked goods manufacturing. So if you're in the market to collect data so that you can implement AI and automation and machine learning, this today, folks, is where you start. Okay, you have to objectify all the data in your process. And if you need any QA help, contact kpmanalytics.com. Today, we are joined by Lena Bosburn. Lena Bosburn has an education in engineering and food science. She specializes in the cereal industry. Working for Chopin Technologies, which is part of KPM Analytics since 2014, she has occupied different positions over the last 9 years and now manages the food products and application team. Her main role is ensuring the application development and promotion of Chopin products, which we will learn about today. They provide personalized solutions to customers willing to improve their product and processes. Lena's responsibilities also include the standardization of the developed methods, working closely with various associations like ISO, AACC, and ICC. Now let's dive in as Lena will share a presentation.
So yes, welcome everyone. And again, thank you BAKERpedia for giving us the opportunity today to discuss a very interesting topic. We are going to talk about baking tests. Baking tests are used every day. This is a daily part of our job, and this is a very useful solution to better qualify flours, to better qualify ingredients, and also various impacts, but they are limited in their subjectivity. And so the idea is we agree that they are an important part of our job, but we can make them better. And this is a little bit what I would like to discuss today. So baking test, just to come back to the basics, this is a controlled small-scale bread production run that is carried out at a lab or plant level of flour mills, ingredient suppliers, and bakeries, of course. So the idea is really to evaluate the quality and performance of wheat flours and various ingredients to determine recipe, to make blends, to assess the right level of additives. It allows really the baker to see, to feel the dough behavior, which is truly an important part of the information. And it is as close as possible to the final process. It cannot be the final process, but it is as close as possible. So it gives very interesting information. This is a great tool, but it has also limitations, such as first thing is that we use standardized baking tests. In France, we have a standardized test to make baguettes. In the US, we have the sponge and dough. We have various standardized methods. Those methods, they do not really represent all baking realities. And even if you conduct a small scale process, that has nothing to do with the real thing. Plus, well, it's very time consuming and it's very costly, especially in R&D, in new product development, where you're using costly products sometimes for your recipe. You need to use a lot of them. So maybe there is a compromise. And this is something that is really important today. This is the part of the subjectivity. Again, baking test relies on expert operators. They are strongly dependent on the baker, and it remains a sensory evaluation. And we all know that we don't feel things the same way if we are tired, if we are happy, hungry, or whatever. And this knowledge, this specific feeling is extremely hard to transmit. So this is not a very reproducible test. Two bakers doing the same test will not necessarily agree on the conclusion. It remains highly subjective. We did the test a couple of years ago. We sent, well, actually a long time ago, but we sent 3 bags of flours to do baking test, to perform baking test. One bag was like flour A, the other bag was flour A plus gluten, and the final bag was flour A plus cysteine. And obviously the baker found that the one with the cysteine was more slack and that the one with gluten needed more water. The trick was, it was the same flour. So the baker baked what he thought he was baking. Not the actual product. And well, it gives you the performance. It allows you to see that this flour is going to perform as expected, or this flour will have difficulty to achieve a right volume. This formulation will give a bad volume. This is something that you will see, but you don't necessarily understand why. And the idea is to look for the reason behind. So the idea is just to put a little bit more objectivity into that, a little bit more understanding of the baking test, not more work. This is something that can be done completely in parallel and that can be more efficient actually than the tools that we are using today. But the idea is really to get there, to use this tool, this very interesting tool, but with objectivity and understanding. So here, this is just, well, this is a representation, a simplification of the AACC process. So as described in the AACC, sorry, so this is a very standard test. Very simple task. You need to mix ingredients. You need to achieve a specific consistency that will allow you to calculate the water absorption. You need to wait and cut a specific amount of dough and shape them. You need to proof that for 3 hours, but there is no temperature indicated in this standard, interestingly. Then you will put that in molds. You will again put that in fermentation chamber for 55 additional minutes at 30 degrees. This time this is indicated. And in the end, you will bake the product and assess the final product characteristics. So volume, but also various parameters such as maybe the color, maybe the height, the roundness, the crumb characteristics and all of that. And in this process, I highlighted a couple of steps in red, because those steps in particular may lack a little bit control. So there is a proofing and there is a final product characterization. When it comes to proofing, proofing is literally a black box. We put the product in fermentation chamber and we don't know what is going on. We don't know if the product is rising correctly. We don't know how it is rising correctly. In the end, if there is something happening during the fermentation, we see it, but usually too late. And this has a great impact on the final characteristics of the product. I will come back to that. And then there is the final product characterization that usually requires a lot of different material, like a caliper, a weighting scale, a colorimeter, volumeter maybe. So a lot of different material, and that can be tricky according to some products. Some products, they are highly deformable, very soft. So when you put that, when you assess their height, if you press a little bit on them, then you will miss the correct height by 2 millimeters. But 2 millimeters may be the difference between the product fitting in the box or not. And some product may be delicate and may break easily. So first, let's see a little bit how we can bring a little bit of data objectivity here a little bit more efficiently about the final product, thanks to vision inspection product, such as the TheiaVu that I will be describing here. So again, usually when we characterize final products, we use a lot of different instruments. And we do that in order to assess every possible aspects of the final product in order to get a little bit of data, a little bit of understanding. As Dr. Lin said, this is the basis of the future. You want to implement artificial intelligence, you need data. So here the idea is to collect a lot of data very quickly. So what you will do is that you will put the product here on this weighting scale to get the weight, of course, and it will be recorded automatically by the software. And then you put the product here on the conveyor, and you just press start. Select the product that you want to analyze, and you press start. And it will automatically measure and assess many parameters. It is equipped with 2D cameras, allowing to assess the diameter of the product, the length, the width, the roundness. And also, of course, we can see color. And if we can see color, we can see in this example, seed distribution. We can see if there are some defects, some black spots, for instance, or white spots in the bottom. And also it is equipped with a laser. So with a 3D camera laser that will allow to assess information such as the height and, of course, then the volume. And it lasts 10 seconds, maybe less. So all of the data then are recorded into a software. You can put that, you can connect that to a LIMS system. You can have all the data stored automatically without any risk of error, just copying the data. So that's great when it comes to new product development. You are working with different recipes. You want to assess their impact. You want to compare and contrast different recipes. That's really ideal. And again, that's a very objective system. It can work on many different products. Here, I was focused on buns, but it works with here. I highlighted the French baguettes. You can see many aspects of it. You can work with buns, with bagels, with tortillas, and for each product, you can have access to personalized calibration to see the things that are very important to you. For some people, it will be the roundness. For some people, it will be the volume, the diameter, the color, whatever makes your final product unique. But if you can see it, then you can detect it. That's a little bit the idea. So I feel like I'm going to repeat myself, but let's go for it. It's a very simple, fast, and comprehensive system. Comprehensive because it measures at the same time many different aspects of the final product. It's very precise, and so you can see really small differences. And you can add customized parameter again to see really what is important to you. It's an all-in-one instrument. You don't need for anything else. It's very efficient, very fast. You put the product, you have the results. So, and you can put on the trolley, you can put like 10, 20 different products and do averages of the results and see the standard deviation with the results. So this can be very powerful. And also it's highly versatile because you don't have to touch the product really. You just have to place it on the conveyor and it works alone. So any kind of final product that is a little bit delicate, deformable, that's really ideal. And then you have the proofing. So proofing, again, may be seen as a little bit tricky because it's both chemical, it's rheological, it's many things at the same time, and it will impact everything. So the idea here is, again, to put a little bit more objectivity into that. So just to give a little bit quick context, because I'm not an expert in fermentation, but this is a chemical process that was discovered a long time ago by the Egyptian, and it was recently, or in 1854, so quite recently in comparison to the discovery, it was explained by Louis Pasteur. BAKERpedia defined the fermentation very simply, and this is a very efficient, I think, definition. It really highlights what is important. This is a biological process. It works without oxygen. It is an anaerobic process, converting sugars and starch into simpler substances, so into free sugars that is then accessible by the yeasts and bacteria to convert this sugar into carbon dioxide, amongst other things, but also flavors and many other compounds. So that is really what allows us to have a dough development, and so to achieve a good volume of the bread. If we think about it, it's very important, because what is a bread? A bread is just like a pack of bubbles linked together, connected together by a continuous phase made of gluten and starch. But this is just like many bubbles together. So if you mess up the fermentation, that impacts the volume of the final product, that impacts the appearance of the crumb, and many other final product aspects. And plus, you have many external factors that directly impact the fermentation. The temperature impacts the activity of the yeast. We work more and more with sourdough. Sourdough is just not controlled. Humidity also will be very tricky. You have the time, of course, but you have also the recipe. Do you have sugar in your recipe or not? That can be very important. So that can be a tricky process to master. And in particular, if you focus on the volume, you have two aspects. To achieve a good volume, you need both gas production. You need to be able to produce gas. And you need to be able to retain this gas into the dough to make the bubbles. If we separate those two things, we can see that they are linked to different aspects. The production of the gas is directly linked to the yeast activity, and so to the strain of the yeast, to the amount of yeast that is used. But it is also linked to the characteristics of the flour. Do we have enough free sugar? And to have free sugar, when we need amylasic activity, do we have enough? Do we have amylase in the formulation? Is the flour has enough damaged starch or too much? This is a question of balance. And then you have all the external factors. Is it summer, winter? How long do I have? Do I need a long fermentation to really develop the flavors, or do I need a very short one to be efficient? What about the humidity? So all of that may affect directly the gas production. But when it comes to gas retention, this is much simpler. This is globally linked to the characteristics of the gluten. You need to have a gluten network with a proper extensibility to allow the dough to rise, but also with a certain tenacity in order to control this deformation and to not break also. So it's only by having all of that under control that you will master the volume, to have the gas production and the gas retention under control. How do we measure that right now? When it comes to traditional ways to measure the proofing characteristics, we have basically two options. We have instruments to measure the gas production measurement, the total amount of gas that was produced, which is already a very interesting information thanks to instruments like the risograph. And then we have also instruments that are developed specifically to measure the development of the dough, such as the maturograph here by Brabender, which is, well, this development is directly linked to the volume. So the idea is to do all of that, but with one equipment providing both the dough development, but also the quantity of gas products. And additionally, it will also indicate the quantity of gas that was retained by the dough. And here we have the missing information. We have the final results, which is the dough development, and we have the explanation. Was the gas produced? Was the gas retained? And how much of it? How does that work? We will first measure the dough development. So we put the dough into a proofing tank and we put a piston onto it. And it is connected to a height sensor that directly measures the dough development. And to explain that, we will measure the gas release information. So there is a pressure sensor here that will measure the evolution of the pressure inside of the tank. If you produce gas, you will decrease you will increase the volume of sinks, you will increase the pressure. So we measure this pressure directly, and then we make the air go through a soda lime cartridge. If there is carbon dioxide in the air, it will be trapped in the soda lime cartridge. And then we measure the pressure again. So without the carbon dioxide. If we have a difference in pressure, that means that we have lost gas. So we measure here the top of the curve. The top curve is the gas production. And in the bottom here, you have the time where the dough has started to lose gas. This is the porosity time and how much gas it has lost. It's a very simple test to perform. You put your soda lime cartridge in place, you put the dough, you make your dough, you put it into your tank, you put the piston onto it with weight or not, that depends, sometimes yes, sometimes not. You close all of that hermetically and you press start. And the entire thing is automatic. In the end, you have something like that. You have 3 curves on 2 graphics. You have the dough development that is directly connected to the final result. So we will characterize when exactly we have reached the maximum development. So you know, if I want a maximum development, then I need to wait this much time. And then you have the gas release curve that explains a little bit the dough development. The gas release curves, so you have the gas production here at the top and here the gas retention. So here we are facing a curve that basically we have stopped producing gas after 2 hours. Gas production is generally linked to the yeast activity. So here there is maybe something about the yeast or about the flour quality, the amount of sugar that is available. Maybe the yeast did not have enough food. And then you have sometimes production that is very stable, but with a big loss of gas. And that will directly impact the dough development and the characteristics of this curve. So I just would like to give you a few ideas of what we can see here. We have made a couple of tests to illustrate a little bit what we can see and what are the impacts here that we see. So here the example is about the impact of the temperature. With the RheoF4, you can modify the temperature of the test in order to simulate a little bit better your process. So you can go wherever, between room temperature and 50 degrees, I believe. But here we were just between 30, 32, and 34 degrees. And what we have observed is that when we increase the temperature, we have a stronger, quicker development. And when we look for the reason in the gas release curve, we see this is because we have produced more gas. we have produced more gas because, well, yeast are simulated by the temperature. They work better at certain temperature, up to a certain level, of course. So that really indicates that the temperature of fermentation is critical for the volume. It's critical for the volume, it's critical for the fermentation time. With more temperature, more gas production, but also the more the gluten is loosened. And here, this is not very visible, but we have actually an impact on the amount of gas that was lost. This is another example here about following the evolution of the yeast activity. So we have taken a fresh yeast. Fresh yeast is extremely difficult to control because, well, this is a living organism. And we have let it live its life in normal condition for a month. And usually when we buy fresh yeast, well, I don't know how it is in the States, but in France, I think that there is like a guarantee that the yeast will work for like 14 days, something like that. So we have followed it during a month just to see. And what we can see is that at day 0, it has a certain activity, but already at day 7, this is not the same one. We can see that the development is slower. It reaches the same volume in the end, the same dough development, but it is slower. And this is because we produce less gas, because the yeast is less active. And at 14 days, yes, it is still very alike, but it has moved. This is not the same. So if you want to reach the same result in the production, then you need to adjust a little bit. You will still, again, in the end, reach, sorry, I don't see my, here it is. In the end, you will reach the same level, the same development, but it will not take the same time. And after 14 days, yes, obviously we can see that the yeast is clearly dying and development is getting slower and slower and slower. So here, it seems possible to maintain a constant volume of dough until the 14th day, but that is only possible if it is fermented almost twice as long. So here, this is another example. We mentioned the critical aspect of the amylase activity. Generally, we tend to use to select a flour with a low falling number and then to add a little bit of amylase. Or at least, yeah, it can happen. And well, amylase will generally boost fermentation because it will give more free sugar, and its impact is actually very visible. We can see it directly between 0 in red, 5 ppm in yellow, and 20 ppm in blue, that we can produce gas for a longer time, and that we will, in the end, produce longer. And this has a direct impact on the dough development. We produce more gas, and so we develop the dough more. Then we just need to have the gluten characteristics. Here we are in an example where the gluten has the strength to resist to this amount of gas. And so the dough is able to develop. But again, this is a matter of balance between gluten, between gas production and gas retention. And then here another example about vital gluten. So vital gluten, and this is very expected, has a positive impact on the volume. But this is not because we have produced more gas. We have not produced more gas. We have produced this exact same quantity. So here that's not very visible because there is a lot of curves. But if you actually measure the area here, the area of gas that was lost by the dough, it's getting smaller and smaller. It retains better the air into the dough. And this is why we have a better dough development here. And then here it's about salt. Salt has a very strong impact on every characteristic of the dough because it has a very strong impact on the osmotic pressure. It will connect with the water, make it less available for the other components. That will impact the mixing, the proofing, the baking, and the final product. And we see that if we put more salts, Well, we will delay the fermentation. We will have in the end less volume. And this is because we produce less. We can directly see here the moderating effect of salt on gas production dynamics because it impacts the osmotic pressure. And here that can really help if you want to formulate, let's say, a new product, a new recipe with less salt. You have to know right now, I am here, I want to go there. That will directly impact my process. And well, this is a very versatile equipment because basically if it is a dough, you can put it inside and measure it. But we have also made some tests on frozen dough. Frozen dough are very interesting and they need very specific yeasts. But any kind of product that you use, any kind of leavening product that you use, you will have an impact of freezing the dough. And that is very visible here. This is on a yeast with freezing here. We can see that the production and the retention are completely different. And so the impact on the dough development is critical. So to sum it up, today baking tests allow us to make important decisions about formulation, about process, about external temperatures, to analyze a flour and decide whether or not it is suitable to my specific process, to analyze the impact of ingredients. But we need to be aware of the variables impacting the final results and the dose of subjectivity in these tests. Whatever the case, even if you are working with the most qualified operators and the most expert bakers, every laboratory is making baking tests would have an advantage in completing their trials with objective and accurate measurement tools to just to understand what's going on. Here you understand my final volume is bad. What is the cause behind? Is it about retention or is it about production? Same impact, two different cause. Here you know, and you have data. And again, data are the basic for the future that we have for artificial intelligence. And way before that, it gives us measurements, not estimation. It gives us accurate measurements. When it comes to baking tests, there are two steps again that are very critical and maybe not so controlled, in particular the proofing. And here the RheoF4 is really the great instrument, a unique instrument for what it can do. What is going on to allow to understand what is going on during proofing. And then to measure, to assess the final product characteristics, then we have vision instruments such as the TheiaVu, to allow very simple, fast, comprehensive, and accurate analysis of the final product. I hope I was not too long. I thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any question, I would be very happy and hopefully Lynn will have to try and answer that.
Thank you, Lena. So just a couple of comments to make. Even at this stage of production, if your plants are running over thousands of pounds an hour, I am pretty sure a lot of you don't even understand the effect of proofing on final volume. And obtaining data at this point can't be more crucial in terms of machine learning. If you're interested in AI automation of your plant, these two instruments are vital in collecting the data. Okay. Secondly, if you are a continuous improvement, quality, R&D, production specialist, just, put in the chat box what you are so that we know how to address the questions accordingly, because it really would help to know who's in our audience and how we should cater the answers to, right? So, oh, somebody just ordered your RheoF4. So, yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure Lena can share this presentation with you. And as you can see, a lot of the fermentation studies are showing that gas production has also other variables to deal with other than the yeast quality and the yeast amount. So by understanding the RheoF4 data, you would be able to cater your process to your final product. And that's always key. My prediction is in the next couple of years with generative AI and everybody working on generative AI, we would eventually see some of that IP spill over into fruit manufacturing. So hopefully by then you should be ready with all your data so that you could just put it into some form of a machine that will spit it out for you. Okay. All right, so let's go over to Q&A right now.
That's a valid point because as stated, proofing has a very important impact on the final product, but mixing also does, and baking obviously, and shaping, and all of the steps, they all do. But when it comes to mixing in particular, this is maybe the step that is the most controlled. Because baker can see what's going on, because baker touched the dough just after it, because they can also mix it a little bit longer. They can stop it and start again. And also because we have a lot of tools to characterize what's going on during mixing, such as the farinograph, such as the mixer lab, such as the dough lab, such as many different tools. So this is a step that is pretty much mastered. And then when it comes to baking, for instance, well, baking is a little bit a pity, because when you bake it, then it's too bad. You cannot do anything else than just have your results. But of course, here also we can count on other instruments such as the RVA, or again the mixer lab, in order to see what's going on during baking. But during proofing, there is not a lot of option. So this is why we wanted really to highlight this presentation on these particular steps. We have other instruments to better see what's going on during other steps, but proofing seemed particularly relevant here.
I would like to add also that a lot of bakers out there underproof in their process so that they can fit the oven time, so that they can fit the dough divider speed. So there is really no focus on proof to optimal strength or optimal volume. Is always proof to cater to the entire process, which is really not the right way to do it. Why? Because you're wasting money. If you underproof the bread or bun or whatever, and guess what? You're just going to proof it in the oven, right? The oven was never meant to be a proofer. Okay, so why are you putting this much money into the yeast for it to work in the oven? So you're putting in too much yeast, basically, right? So and this is my suspicion, as with a lot of processes, you're underproofing it so that you can fit your process, and so that you aren't afraid you're going to overproof it. So this is where, it's like the chicken and the egg problem. Where do we start? It's like, how do we look at it? So the key is to understand your fermentation process. So Alina, correct me if I'm wrong. Can they actually take the final product and put it into the RheoF4 and study it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so if you're able to do that for at least 100 samples, just to understand the capabilities of your process, the outliers of your process, right? And then you'll be able to correlate that data to the sightline data. So that's important, because you want to really streamline your process and make sure that you don't waste money in putting in too much yeast. At the same time, your oven was never meant to be a proofer, so don't treat it that way. Okay?
No, that's a very valid point. Absolutely, Lynn. And here the idea is that with the Rheo, you can see when it's actually time to put your dough in the oven to achieve the correct volume.
Correct.
Absolutely. I did not put any example on sourdough, but this is something that works very well. And this is also something that we would like to develop. So if you are interested in working with us on this topic, please do not hesitate to contact us, as we would be happy to learn more also on sourdough. We know a little, we would like to know a lot more.
Sourdough is challenging because we're talking about a unclassified strain of wild yeast and bacteria that is unpredictable, right? So getting data from this population of dough and bread is going to be challenging. My suggestion is, if you're going to do sourdough studies, really be careful of your flour quality and fermentation conditions.
Yeah.
You really need to control these things. If you don't control these things, then you can't collect the data and therefore you can't predict. Okay? So yes, absolutely, you can do it, but with lots of caution on the process.
Yeah, this is a very versatile equipment. As long as you don't work with a liquid dough, then you're good to go.
So I have something to say about gluten-free.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hell of a time trying to develop for this particular niche. And the biggest issue is really to simulate a system that can hold in the gas, right?
Yeah.
So that is the biggest thing. If you have a particular formula or recipe that holds in the gas, that's key to any kind of gluten-free baking that you want to simulate a traditional product. And you can absolutely see it in the RheoF4 as well.
Yeah, no, if you are interested in that, do not hesitate in contacting us, because we have some literature that we would be happy to share. And yeah, gluten-free is a very challenging process. Like, copying what gluten does is just nearly an impossible task, but with the proper tool, then this is something that gets a little bit easier. That depends. The first thing is that depends on your COA.
Is your COA accurate?
Yeah, you have first, what are the levels that you set, like protein, if it's between 10 and 12, what happens if it's 12.1? So who set up these limits and why? That's the first thing. And the second thing is that, what are those specifications? What do they control? Do you have farinograph? Probably you must have farinograph, I guess. In this case, you control the mixing. You must have protein, you must have maybe falling number, but you may lack some information about proofing again. You get information about the gluten thanks to the farinograph, but maybe here you don't know what's going on when you heat the gluten. You have how the gluten behave during mixing, but what had the during the oven spring, the gluten has to resist to a very big pressure. So if it's not resistant enough, or if it's too resistant and does not allow the bread to rise during the oven spring, then you would have a very bad volume in the end. And to assess that, to assess how the gluten reacts to the temperature, a very interesting instrument would be the MixerLab. This is not the point of today, but that could be it. Or maybe this is about the damaged starch. That depends if you have added sugar in your fermentation or not, in your formulation or not. But maybe damaged starch could be also a good lead here. Many aspects, many aspects actually. Yeah, Lynn, I'm sure that you have many recommendations.
I would like to add to that as well.
You have so many impacts.
The biggest issue I've seen COAs, whether they remain the same in every batch that comes in, and you get all of a sudden a dip in your quality, my biggest suspicion is the COA is not accurate, right? So I've always recommended that plants that are running at over 1,000 pounds an hour to put in a rheological instrumentation at the quality checkpoint. Because even though if protein quantity is accurate, you might not get the right protein quality. And you can't see that on a COA unless the mill runs a farinograph or a mixolab for you. So that's key. That is key why your products are not performing, is you don't have the right kind of proteins in there. Another thing that could possibly be affecting that is, the mixing tolerance. If your mixer operator is not well trained and doesn't know how to feel the dough and basically gives a set mix time to all the doughs, they can easily overmix the dough and easily break down the gluten proteins. And if you don't have dough conditioners in there, and this is the whole reason why we have dough conditioners, is to help with operational margin of errors, right? If you don't have dough conditioners in there and you break down that dough, what you're gonna have is broken down gluten strands, right? With dough conditioners, these gluten strands slowly get back together during the proofing process, okay? So either work on understanding what dough conditioners you use, train your dough operator, fix your COAs. I'm sorry, this is not a straightforward question, but these are the things you need to do. If you're seeing these problems frequently, make sure that firstly, the dough conditioners are good. If that's a very easy fix. If that doesn't fix it, make sure that the COAs are correct, and that will take a few weeks. If that doesn't fix it, then call me. I can help you fix that problem. Yeah, so hopefully that helps.
Usually what we do is that we try first to identify where it's coming from. Is it something that happens, like, for instance, is the fermentation seems okay? Do you have a collapse during baking? This kind of information can really help understanding where it's coming from. What is the bad guy behind? Is it protein quality? Is it the starch quality? And so what would be the most appropriate solution and the most appropriate COA for you, for your specific product? This is a very wide question. The idea is that, as Lynn said, we need to replicate what the gluten does. And that's, we need to be able to develop the product, to have an airy crumb, to have a soft product, to have something that has a mouthfeel that is acceptable. And with gluten-free, this is just so much more of a challenge than with gluten-packed product. And so here your formulation is key. Of course, what you put inside to replicate what the gluten does is key. And for example, if you take two different rice flours, you won't get the same results because they don't have, just like with flour, different qualities. So the idea is just like with normal product, gluten products, is to understand what your ingredients are doing, to set up specifications on your ingredients, to fine-tune your formulation. And here again, fermentation is key if you want to have a final product that is acceptable. So controlling fermentation for gluten-free product is, well, just like with normal product, is very important.
So the gluten-free formulation process is key to fermentation. What kind of starches are you using? What kind of, if you're using methyl cellulose is important in industrial gluten-free baking because it just tolerates the process of proofing. Also understand that the more native starch that you use, the faster it's going to break down in your entire process, regardless, right? So while pre-gels work in the mixing process, it's not going to hold your gas. So even though it feels good as a dough, it's not going to last in the proofing process. And if you monitor it through the RheoF4, you should be able to see what I mean, okay? A lot of people don't understand that gluten-free mixing is very different from conventional mixing. And people tend to overdevelop the gluten-free dough. And when you do that, you actually break them down. So you want to mix until it looks like a dough ball and then forget about it, right? And just let it be. Don't overmix it, okay? What you want to do really is to really let it sit and let it mellow out, okay? Once you mellow out, then the continuous film will keep the gas in. And that you can actually do a mixing test on the RheoF4 to really understand to which point do I mix to, okay? That way it starts at the mixer and you control the entire process until it's baked, right? Right now you can't see it. You're doing this blindly. I say that because I do it blindly too, and I'm like sometimes wishing, I'm like, I wish I have a RheoF4 or mixer lab. Just take a look at this thing, you know? So it's just like guessing on mixing, guessing on proofing, and guessing on baking. We're all guessing, which we shouldn't, right? So if you have the capability to quantify each and every step and to make sure that you're mixing properly, you're proofing properly, and you're baking properly, you should be able to use what Lena recommended for objectively quantifying your process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is the example that you said is perfect to control your mixing time here. You test your formulation with different mixing time, and then you place the dough into the RheoF4, and you see which is the optimal in order to have the best dough development, maximum dough development.
Correct.
Everything that has an impact on either characteristics of the gluten or proofing characteristic in general. So something that would impact amylase, of course, is a valid candidate. I showed an example, but we have done tests with xylanase, with glucose oxidase, with well, I don't even remember with cystine.
So we have phospholipase that affects, you know, the emulsification of the bubbles. So that definitely can be monitored by RheoF4. Don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We also have things like proteases that actually work on gluten proteins and other proteins, you know, in gluten-free work on, you know, the different lentil or pea proteins to really determine whether it still stays with its elasticity to hold in the gas. So for proteases, it's all to do with elasticity, not viscosity. The more viscous a protein is, the less gas it will hold in. The more elastic a protein is, the more gas it will hold in. So protease has a huge effect on volume. I would also like to talk about glucose oxidase, right? Glucose oxidase has a huge, when people use glucose oxidase in their baking, they see a huge jump in oven spring. So that has a lot to do with the gluten proteins as well. So, and how it interacts with the starches during baking. So everything enzymatically has a ton to do with volume, and because it affects its fermentation during the proofing process.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yes, of course we do. This is a little bit the idea. So do not hesitate to call us, and we will ask a lot of questions. We will discuss together in order to understand if there is a pain, where the pain is coming from, or more optimistically put, what do you want to improve? And we can see together how to set up the best experiment plan with the best appropriate instruments, and see together to improve your overall quality. So yeah, do not hesitate to reach out.
Great. I would like to add to that too. I also do offer support, and you can go to our consulting page on BAKERpedia to contact me to do that. However, Lena is going to be the point person for you if you're purchasing this instrument and implementing your QA procedures. All right. So thank you, Lena, and thank you, everyone, for coming today. And thank you to our sponsor, KPM Analytics, for sponsoring this wonderful session on objective analyzers. So check back in soon on our website for more webinars and pocket guides on baking. Have a great day, folks. Bye.